Hey you guys, what is up? It's Antonio. Welcome back to another episode here on Gladiator Disc Golf. I'm super excited about today's episode because it's something that is going to help everybody. In today's episode, we're talking about nose angle on both the backhand and the forehand. Nose angle is something that's super important and it's really tricky to execute. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first thing is that all the different discs we throw, each of them are susceptible to different amounts of nose angle. And so it kind of makes it difficult sometimes to adequately throw the disc, especially when you're learning. The other thing is that sometimes we just get in a funk, and sometimes we're just missing our line, not holding the disc right, and throwing it a little nose up. So today we're going to talk about the two main ways you can tell if you're throwing nose up, and then how to correct each of those instances on both the backhand and the forehand. I'm super excited about this video. Let's get into it. When we talk about throwing the disc nose up, we don't mean that you are throwing it high into the air. That's a useful shot. That's something like a spike hyzer or a big backhand turnover or something like that. Throwing the disc up into the air does not mean you are throwing it nose up. Throwing the disc nose up, if I'm throwing this way, means that the front nose of the disc is being lifted like this when I throw. And the reason you hear it all throughout disc golf to say to throw the nose down is because you want to get the nose up angle down. It doesn't mean that you want to throw the disc with the nose literally down, because then it's going to go straight into the ground 15 feet in front of you. It's just the language we use to counteract the traditional nose up angle that a lot of people throw with, especially beginners. So we say throw it nose down in order to make it nice and flat. There are two ways to know that you are throwing the disc nose up. The first is if you are trying to throw the disc nice and flat and straight ahead with no, hyzer or anything. When you're trying to do that, do you see the disc lifting? And then the other thing that's really tied closely with that is, do you see the top of the flight plate? If you can see the top of the flight plate while the disc is in midair, it means that the disc is nose up. For example, if you are throwing in my direction, so the disc is coming this way, a nice flat throw, you aren't really able to see the nose of the disc. Here we're in a sense throwing it nose down, okay? But the moment that you throw it nose up, it goes from nice and flat like this to like this. So if you can see the top of the flight plate when you're trying to throw it straight and not very high off the ground, you are throwing nose up. Let's start with the backhand, because this is where we see the most nose up throws in the backhand. Don't get me wrong, you can easily throw nose up in forehand, but a lot of the issues that people have when it comes to the backhand are in regard to throwing the disc nose up. How do we fix that? Well, pour a cup of coffee. A lot of people throw nose up when they hold the disc like this. Notice how the bottle is up this way, okay? In order to pour the bottle, you have to point the nose down. So if I'm pouring the bottle right here, we see that my thumb is in line with my forearm. Now, without moving my wrist, I'm going to slide this bottle out, and let's now slide the disc in. Notice how the disc is now nose down. So if I release like this, the disc is going to fly nice and flat and straight. Now let's go ahead and let's talk about the forehand. There are times where I throw the forehand, which is my dominant throw, and I see that I've thrown it nose up. And so it's a little annoying for that to happen. So let's talk about how you can actually fix that so that you can avoid getting into trouble out on the course. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It really helps me, especially with the analytics, and it lets me know that you want to see more content like this. Alright, let's get back to the forehand and avoiding nose up angles. If you've watched any of my videos where I play around, Mail Monday episodes, anything like that, and you've seen me throw in the forehand, you've probably seen me push the nose down on my disc before throwing. And that's the simple fix for the forehand that I have found to be the easiest to do and the easiest to remember. I like to get the disc in my hand in my comfortable grip without touching it. And then once I'm lining up my shot, I take my left hand, my non-throwing hand, and I push the nose down. We're going to use the Storm Disc Crater to demonstrate a nose-up angle and then the nose-down angle. So in this case, what I'm doing here is I'm holding the disc comfortably and not checking my nose angle. So if I just hold it the way my wrist wants to hold it, it's going to be very nose up. So I'm expecting the disc to really pick up in the air, and since this is an overstable approach disc, it's going to dump pretty quickly. As I stated before, you see here with it being thrown nose up that the disc isn't going to travel very far, and in fact we can see the top of the flight plate. This is a common error, and if you're seeing this in your throws, you're probably throwing nose up. Contrast that with this throw here where I'm throwing the disc nice and flat. Notice how I am pushing the nose of the disc down to prevent myself from throwing the disc nose up. So in the very beginning of this video, I mentioned something kind of passing by and I wanted to come back to it. So let's circle back to my comment where I said it all kind of depends on the discs that you're using. With putt approach discs, it's easy to get away with nose up angles. As you've seen in the last couple throws, it's not that hard to throw nose up with those discs and still get the disc to travel a good way down the fairway. However, as you get to sharper nose discs like the Maelstrom or the Abyss, you're going to see that the nose of the disc is a lot more finicky when it comes to the nose up angle. So it's super important, it's vital, it's essential that you get the nose down when you're throwing drivers. Otherwise it's going to mess up your throw entirely. So much so that even an understable driver will act overstable when thrown nose up. So as you saw right there, the more understable Abyss, I saw the top of the flight plate the entire time, and while the disc did get down the fairway from sheer power, it was lifting up the entire time, and then the fade of it was not so much the fade of the disc, but really it just dropped. And so definitely nose up angle, not what we want, especially when we throw a driver. So let's go and let's throw that same disc, but nose down, and see the difference. So when I get in position, I just push it down, so I don't make that mistake that you saw in the first clip. And just like that, we got a great tiny little S-curve out of that disc, and it faded, and yes, the disc was slowing down, but the fade was more natural, more gradual, and that it really had a nice straight flight to it. One of the best ways to help with nose angle is to throw putters and mids, but like I said earlier, putters and mids can hide your nose angles a lot better than drivers can. So when you start throwing drivers, pay close attention to what the disc is doing. Just because it's lifting up doesn't mean that's necessarily too much speed for you. Sometimes you're throwing the disc nose up, and so in a way, drivers are going to help you really dial in your nose angle in ways that putters and mids can't. Now don't get me wrong, you throw a putter and mid nose down, it's going to fly very, very far. But with just a little bit of nose up angle, it can still fly very, very far. Whereas with distance drivers and fairway drivers, because of how touchy the nose is when it comes to a nose up angle, it's not going to fly nearly as far as it can as if you throw it nice and flat. So when you're throwing your drivers, pay close attention and see what is the disc doing. You'll be able to get a lot of information from the disc and to know exactly what your wrist is doing upon release. And that's basically it, guys. That's all it takes to throw the disc nose down. It's very simple. So to recap, for the backhand, you want to pour that cup of coffee. You want to pour that body armor, right? For the forehand, you just want to go ahead and push that nose down. Well, that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, have a great round.